that today is Earth Day. If you go to your Canvas homepage and look under discussions, there's an activity there that I want to go over with you. I'm going to pull it up. Yay, everybody's here today. It should be, let me get my student view. If you click on discussions, biology review, so let me pull mine up, and it's not on your homepage. You'll have to give me 1 second to pull it up for you. We're going over it together. The answer sheet is attached to it, so you should use it as a study guide. So rather than go through all the pages that are in Canvas and pulling out all, you can use this one page to go through. It covers pretty much all of the topics that you, and if I can get my thing to go in the right spot. Oh my gosh, how did it get over there? Now I've lost you altogether. Okay, so if you click on we're going to start at the top, and like I said, I'm going to go through each one with you. It's not just to give you the answers. Like I said, the answer sheet is attached. It's at the bottom, or I should say on the last page. But try to give you some background discussion about each question. Also try to give you testing skills. Let me make it a little bigger for me to read. Okay, there we go. All right, so again, your test is Thursday. You can't take a study sheet in with you, so hopefully you're studying, and then this page will assist you greatly in your studying for the test. I will discuss the answers with you as to why, because understand these are not the questions. You will have questions like this, and you need to know how to think about the question, how to interpret the vocabulary, look at what is it asking you for, and try to understand how to maybe guess at the correct answer if necessary, because you understand the question. All right, question number 1. This is, which of the following organelles contributes to homeostasis by regulating the movement of materials in and out of the cell? All right. Homeostasis, as we talked about the other day, is creating stability or a balance. Okay, so you want the thing that creates a balance with the cell is the cell membrane. Keep in mind, it's like a screen. It regulates what comes into the cell and what goes out of the cell, because only certain things can pass through it. And I'm going to add a picture of the cell membrane to this assignment, but let me do that right now. Hold on, because you need to, I'm gonna close that. I have to come out of student view first. And I'm going to edit this. You need to, and let me and add an image. Uh, had it yesterday. Where'd it go? Pictures. All right, I'll find it later. Oh, I think I just copied and pasted it from, didn't save it. But you need to have this. Come on. Stop. Because they're going to talk, there's going to be a lot of questions about this. So you need to, where's the one I wanted? This one. All right. You need to be able to study this one and know its function. All right. So again, study that and know that because it's going to ask you about the biolipid layer. It's going to ask you about the transport proteins. You need to understand active and passive transport in that things that pass through the cell membrane are passive and they're small enough to do so. Things that are too large have to be facilitated, which means you need to help them to come through the membrane. Okay, thank you, Natalie, for sharing. All right, and back to this one. All right. So it's the cell membrane. It maintains homeostasis. It regulates what's going in and out of the cell. It says, which of the following provides evidence of interaction between ribosomes and the mitochondria in helping to maintain homeostasis? In other words, what is the relationship? You need to know what the function of the parts are. What does a ribosome do? What does the mitochondria do? The ribosome makes proteins. In order to make proteins, you need energy. That's the job of the mitochondria. It makes energy. So A is the correct answer for this. So that's how you have to think about when they say interaction. You need to think of what does this do and what does the other one do and what do they have to do with each other. All right, so A, energy is required for the cell to produce proteins. Number 3, which of the following describes the interaction between chloroplasts and mitochondria? Here again, what is the relationship? So what does a chloroplast do? A chloroplast is found in plant cells. This is where photosynthesis takes place. What does photosynthesis do? It makes the glucose. What does the glucose needed for? It's needed for energy. Mitochondria is the energy factory. So it goes from making the food in the chloroplast, which goes to the mitochondria to make the energy. So that's D, chloroplast manufacture food, mitochondria breaks the food down to convert it into energy. All right, number 4, which of the following provides evidence of the Golgi apparatus and the endoplasmic reticulum interacting to allow the cell to maintain homeostasis? Again, you need to know what a Golgi apparatus does. So hopefully you studied your list of all the organelles in the cell and what they do, because that's what you need to know in order to answer these kind of questions. This one is C. The Golgi apparatus is a vessel that packages things. And so it's going to package it so that it can send it throughout the cell. So the endoplasmic reticulum is like a highway system for transporting things from one place to another. So that's what it does. All right. And stop me if you need me to re-explain something. If you say, why is that? I don't understand what that means or why that is. Just put a raised hand in the chat or something. Otherwise, there's 90 questions. I'll get through half of them today and we'll get through the other half tomorrow. That's if I see you tomorrow. I think I'll see you tomorrow. I know I won't see you on Thursday, which is when the test. Okay. It's my other class that I won't see. All right. Which two organelles work together to maintain homeostasis by breaking down waste materials produced throughout the cell? Again, you have to know what a lysosome does. Lysosome contains enzymes, digestive enzymes. So it will break down all the materials, waste materials, and then it packages it in a vacuole. The vacuole moves over to the side of the cell, spits it out. So they work together. The other two words you need to be familiar with are endocytosis and exocytosis. That means that things are going to be spit out of the cells. If it's exo, that's exit. And endo is when they bring it in. But in doing so, the vacuole moves to the edge of the cell and spits the stuff out. On the outside, it's going to the cell membrane will create a vacuole. Things will fall into it, and then it'll pinch off, and then the vacuole will go where it needs to go. So those two words, endocytosis, exocytosis, need to remember those. Okay, we switch to mitosis. In the diagram, and always take time. You have time to take this test, so don't rush through it trying to knock it out because this is 20% of your grade. Okay, so be serious about it. Read the questions. Look at all of the pictures carefully. Study the picture before you try to answer the question. All right, it demonstrates which of the following. And it is A, mitosis produces cells that are genetically identical to their parents. So you start off with a cell that has in this case, two chromosomes, and you end up with two cells that have two chromosomes in them that are exactly like. The other thing you need, and then while you download this, you can make notes on this and put little footnotes and things on it. This is yours, right? I'm not collecting this back. So this is not for a grade. This is for you. PMAT. So label them PMAT. You need to know prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase. And those are the processes of my mitosis in order. So make sure you remember that. Prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase, PMAT. All right, number 7. Mitosis is critical to cell division and growth because it ensures every cell division and growth, every cell receives an exact copy of the organism's genetic information. And that's the whole point of it. We want cells. And the other thing that you need to remember is mitosis happens in the body cells. It does not happen in the sex cells. That's meiosis when we get down to the next number 9. Mitosis happens in the body cells. You want all your body cells to be exactly like the previous cells so they can do what they're supposed to do. All right, the next one, binary fission is important to reproduction of what life form. Binary means in two, and fission means to divide. So the cell is simply dividing into, this is a form of asexual reproduction. You don't need two cells to reproduce. You only need the one, and it's going to divide in two. The things that divide in two are bacteria. They reproduce by simply dividing up their cellular information and dividing into. Everything else on this list requires sexual reproduction. All right, meiosis, this is where you get sexual reproduction. Contributes to genetic continuity because it ensures that C, the gametes of sexually reproducing organisms will contribute half, half of the genetic material of each parent. So by creating a cell with half the information, when they combine, they create a whole number again. Okay? All right, number 10 has a picture of meiosis. Again, study it so that you're looking at the fact that you're starting off with chromosomes that are together, and then they make copies of themselves, and then those copies in turn split from one another. Okay, so you get mitosis happens first, and that's where you get the two cells, and then those cells divide, but separating the chromosome. So each of the four cells, and this ends up with four cells for both eggs and sperm, and each of those cells only has one chromosome, half the number that they started with. So again, study the picture first so that you understand what it's talking about. The end result is C, half the genetic material. All right, and that's because when the sperm unites with the egg, you want the whole number back again. You don't want twice as many chromosomes as you had before. All right, number 11, which of the following are large molecules that are broken down into smaller molecules? All right, these are all our macromolecules. Actually, it's actually about the macromolecules, but when we did our chart for macromolecules, we said, what is each macromolecule made of? The only one that is a macromolecule is the carbohydrate. Each of these other ones are parts of a macromolecule. Carbohydrates are made of units of simple sugars. So simple sugar is not the right answer because they are the units of carbohydrates. Fatty acids are the units of lipids. Amino acids are the units of protein, so they are not the large macromolecule. They are the units of a macromolecule. All right, 12. The surface of the leaves of many plants can help reduce the water loss because they are not water permeable. How does this biomolecule, how does this biomolecule, how does the biomolecule that makes up the surface differ from other macromolecules? And that is C. Um, It is made up of long chains of fatty acids. You know, water and oil don't mix, right? Or fats and oils don't, sorry, fats and water don't mix. So the surface, if you try to pour water on the leaf of a plant, it just rolls off. And that's so that it can retain the water that's inside. Plants get their water not by what falls on top of them, it's what comes up through the roots of the plant. So that's how they get the water to all the cells. Not by, and then the waxy cover keeps the water inside. It doesn't dehydrate like how we sweat and the water leaves us. Plants don't do that. They do transpire, but they do that through vacuoles in the leaf. So, okay, they do give off, because when we do the water cycle, we talk about plants also return water vapor to the atmosphere, but not through the surface of the leaf. They have little vacuoles that open and close and let water vapor out. All right. Which of the following molecules make up muscles, organs, and transmit signals between cells and constitutes immune molecules? And those are your proteins. Protein, there are different kinds of proteins. Hormones are proteins. Your tissue cells are proteins. What else are they talking about? Some of parts of your um, the chemicals that send signals from one nerve to another, those are made of proteins. Enzymes are proteins. So there are a lot of structures and things in the body that are protein based. 14. Which of the following biomolecules are a major energy source for cells? And I kind of disagreed with this question. Each macromolecule has a main function. The main function of a carbohydrate is to provide energy. All of your macromolecules can provide you with energy. It's just that, and then your answer, and I say this because your answer key is going to tell you that it's lipids. Lipids have more energy than carbohydrates. It's just harder to get to them. So if the body wants energy, it's going to carbohydrates first. And if it runs out of, so when people go on a diet and they cut out all the carbs, then the body says, okay, I need energy. I'm going to go break down my fat molecules. And then when it runs out of fat molecules, then it starts breaking down your proteins. Okay, so this is why people eventually lose body muscle mass if they start starving themselves, because the body will find a way to get energy. So it will take, except for the nucleic acids, it'll take energy from carbohydrates first, lipids second, and proteins last. Okay, but you will get them as far as a molecule of energy, molecules of energy, you get more energy from a lipid than you will carbohydrates. It's just not its first choice. So I kind of, was skeptical about the answer to that. So keep that in mind if you see a question like this, that the major job of carbohydrates is to provide energy, the ATPs and all that sort of thing. But if you had a fat molecule, it will give you more ATPs than carbohydrates will. All right. 15. Which of the following is a function of lipids? And we just talked about that. It is to um, store energy from the cell. Okay, so it is a storage place. So the body will go there to get energy if it can't get it from the carbohydrates. When teams have their little dinner before they go on. Football teams have a tendency to have big spaghetti dinners and things like they to carbo load before a game. That's because carbs give you quick energy. Okay, you have to work at. You have to. It requires energy to break down to get the energy that is stored in a lipid. So that's not its first choice. Not again, not its first choice. All right, 16. Which of the following is the function of an enzyme? It is to increase the rate of a reaction. Most chemical reactions don't take place without a little bit of help, and the help comes from an enzyme. The enzyme does not become part of the product. So when you're making something from in a chemical reaction and you add an enzyme, the enzyme makes it happen and then leaves or becomes inactive, but is not part of your product. All right, 17, the difference between active and passive transport. Active transport requires energy to move across the concentration gradient, and passive does not. Concentration gradient is your cell membrane. And remember the rule that things go from an area of high concentration to an area of low. All right, here again, you need to study the picture before trying to answer the question. So you have a circular area that represents the cell membrane. You have these transport molecules sticking out of the cell membrane, like the picture that I uploaded for you. And then you have the arrow that says that these molecules on the outside are moving to the inside. Now, I just told you the rule is things go from high concentration to low. There are more molecules inside that cell than are outside, but the cell wants those molecules that are on the outside, so it is going to make it happen. If it's going to make it happen, that's active transport. Okay, so the question is asking you which illustrates this best. It is B, active transport of the solute, and the solute is the little molecules of the solute. In a solution, you have two parts. The solute, which is the things that are dissolved in the solvent, which is your liquid. Okay, so this is in the cytoplasm or your whatever the liquid in your body. So the things on the outside, the little dots on the outside are solute. They are floating in the solvent. The solute is supposed to move from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration, except if it wants it bad enough, it will make the effort to bring it inside. So that's what this is doing. And then, so that is active transport and it requires energy. 19. Which of the following accurately describes the difference between osmosis and diffusion? Technically, osmosis is the diffusion of water. Regular diffusion refers to molecules, regular molecules. Osmosis is only the diffusion of water. So that would be A. The movement of water across a membrane, and diffusion is the movement of water molecules. And again, from high to low concentrations. All right, active transport maintains homeostasis in a cell by which of the following processes? And that's B, by using energy to move molecules from where they are to where where they want them to be. And then again, this is what I was talking about. Normally, if it's in a crowded situation, it's going to move from where it is crowded to where there is less crowded. Okay, moving from where there's more to where there's fewer. But if it wants to get it there, it has to have energy, so it can do the reverse. So this is another way of thinking about high to low, moving it from where there is more to where there is less. All right, here we go again with the high to low. Again, study the diagram. It says water in a lower concentration of sugar is placed in inside one side of the container. Water with a higher concentration of sugar is placed in the other side of the container. The two sides are separated by a barrier. So this situation demonstrates passive transport if the following occurs. All right, so again, the barrier that right now this is a solid barrier, and on one side those little molecules, those little dots represent sugar. There's only a few of them on the left side, so that's low concentration of sugar, and there's a lot of them on the right side, so that's a high concentration of sugar. So what this is showing was sugar molecules will pass through the barrier, assuming that it's like a cell membrane, until the concentration of sugar is uniform. So in other words, it will go from high to low until there's an equal number of molecules on both sides. So this movement doesn't go on forever, but it's called equilibrium. So that's another word you have to remember. Equilibrium. Once equilibrium is established, this movement will stop, but it will go from the right side where it's high to the left side where it's low until it reaches equilibrium. All right. Which of the following provides the best description for the role of glycolysis in cellular respiration? All right, during cellular respiration, we have that equation with glucose, which is a 6-carbon molecule, and oxygen. And during that process of cellular respiration, we break that 6-carbon molecule down to 3-carbon molecules. And so B is the answer. It breaks glucose and releases energy in pyruvic acid. It breaks it down to 2, and those 2 molecules are pyruvic acid. So you would have to go back and look up what glycolysis is. It is because there are several steps to cellular respiration as they break down the glucose to get to making the ATP. All right, what is the relationship between photosynthesis and cellular respiration? Remember, I gave you the equation. You need to remember the one equation and know that if it's the same thing forwards and backwards. So basically what it is saying in B is the reactants of one are the products of the other. Reactants are the things that go into the chemical equation. Products are the things that come out of the chemical equation. So that's taking us to 24. What goes into cellular respiration is glucose and oxygen. And we're going to break that down, and we're going to release water and carbon dioxide, and then we get heat and ATP during cellular respiration. So the correct answer for this is B. The first one is glucose and the second one is carbon dioxide. Now, if you remember that, if you flip it and you say water plus carbon dioxide and go backwards, then it gives you oxygen and glucose, and that's photosynthesis. So you can, if you get this one right and they ask you about photosynthesis, it's just the reverse. The only difference is photosynthesis requires sunlight, and I believe that's one of the next. All right, well, you have to understand that to do the next question. And you need enzymes for respiration. All right, again, um, look at the pictures, study them carefully. And notice the difference between each, and the number of hours of sunlight is different on each one. So even though beaker A looks like beaker C, there's more sunlight on beaker A than there is on beaker C. And even though B looks like D, one has more sunlight than the other. And the question then asks you, if you have 4 beakers of dissolved carbon dioxide, you need carbon dioxide for photosynthesis. So they have put carbon dioxide in that water. The most reasonable prediction at the end of the investigation is that the beaker with the lowest of concentration of carbon dioxide will be. So that means the one that is going to um, be carrying on the most photosynthesis. So what do you need for photosynthesis? You need carbon dioxide and you need a lot of sunlight. The one with the most sunlight is beaker A. Okay, you have 2 leaves in there, so that means they're going to be using up twice as much carbon dioxide, and you also have more sunlight than because you could argue that beaker C is using up a lot of carbon dioxide too, but it's not going to carry on photosynthesis as fast. See, the sunlight is also like a catalyst. The reaction doesn't happen without sunlight. So if you got a little bit of light, you're gonna have a little bit of photosynthesis. Okay, so beaker A is the correct answer for that. All right. Which statement describes the structure of DNA, how the structure of DNA facilitates replication? B. There are a few nucleotides and only limited variation. Thing you have to remember about DNA is the whole DNA does not replicate. It unzips. So if you go back to your notes on DNA replication, it unzips and only a portion of the DNA is replicated, not the whole thing. Once it copies that part, then it zips back up and it moves on to another section. It's 27. Which of the following provides the best evidence to support the claim that non-disjunction has occurred during the process of cell division? Again, you have to look up that vocabulary word, non-disjunction. Excuse me. That's looking at the fact that when chromosomes, during mitosis, the chromosomes are supposed to separate. If they don't separate and they stay together, you're going to have a situation with C where one of the daughter cells has both chromosomes and the other one has none. Okay, so that's what happens during non-disjunction. Non-disjunction means that they hung on to each other and they didn't separate. All right, which of the following is the best explanation for the process of translation? And that's D. The basic structure of DNA has changed due to a mistake or an environmental factor. This question didn't make a whole lot of sense to me for that to be the answer. This is the answer that they gave. You're going to get a change due to a mistake in if there is a mutation of some sort. And then the next question, I think, asks you about something. Yeah, it's kind of like that. All right, so looking again at the picture, the first picture where it says population X is exposed to radiation. So you have a cell that has 2 chromosomes in it and it's exposed to radiation. And then it says it exhibits a mutation. And then 30 generations later, those cells are still exhibiting a mutation. And population Y, they were shielded from the radiation. There was no mutation. And 30 generations later, there's still no mutation. All right, that being said, then you read the question. One population is exposed to the other is shielded. Both populations are allowed to reproduce. 30 generations later, the descendants are exposed to the descendants of the exposed radiation still have a mutation. Why can't this observation be used to support the claim that exposure to the radiation did not cause the mutation? Okay. And then it's because you have what you call, when you do an experiment, you always have something. If you make a change, you have to have something to compare it to. So you have to have a group, your control group, where you don't make any change to it at all. All right. So because the ones that didn't have anything happen to them still continue to not have anything happen to them, we have to blame the mutation on the fact that they were exposed to um, the radiation. So the correct answer for that is D. Once the mutation is present in the genome, it is inherited by all of the offsprings. Okay. And then that's because they're going to just continue to do binary fission. They're just going to do asexual reproduction. It's going to keep generating whatever was created in the first place. Okay. All right. 30. Changes in the DNA such as insertions or deletions. That means in your strip of DNA, you added a base or you took one out. So that means that's like spelling your name without and leaving out a letter, or spelling your name and adding a letter. Okay, that's what insertions or deletion. When you translate it, it's going to be different. So you're going to have where is it? The appearance. Where'd I go? You see the appearance of new traits. Okay. You, like I said, it's like your name. Your name will look different because you added something or because you took a letter out. 31, genetic engineering is a major factor in the development of which of the following? Disease-resistant crops are GMOs. And somebody did their project on that earlier when we were doing genetic engineering. That's why they do it. They want to create crops that the bugs don't like, that won't rot, so that more crops will be yielded at the end of the day and we can feed more people. All right, one product of biotechnology, which is genetically modified foods. Some of the people are concerned about this because, and this was part of your project too, as you had to come up with the ethical reasons why while we're trying to feed more people, why is this not necessarily a good idea? The production of these foods increases the biodiversity of the organisms on the earth. And the downside to that is, for example, with salmon, if we genetically modify the salmon so that we can create more healthier salmon, some of these salmon end up fertile. So we have more salmon, but then they can't reproduce because they become infertile because of what we've genetically done to them. So that's a downside. All right, 33. Which of the following is one of the ethical concerns raised about cloning? And it's a similar thing that the potential life is destroyed when the embryonic cells are used. So cloning, you're taking a part of the cell and duplicating it so that it becomes exactly like the parent. But in the process, you do destroy. And I think the next question is the same. The ethical message of a stem cell search is C. Some are created by destroying human embryos. So they get the stem cells from human embryos. There's something else I was going to say about that, but I'll leave it alone. That has a lot to do. There's controversy about stem cell research too. All right, the advantages are made, my biotechnology is important to make informed decisions in order to avoid hazards associated with which of the following? Dangerous organisms. Dangerous organism. Okay. You don't want to create dangerous organisms, and you don't want to organisms that have adverse effects. All right. Where did I go? I don't know if y'all watch 911. The the lady was in the lab. She genetically altered a virus a antidote to a virus. Normally, the virus took days in order to show its effect. She changed the disease so it happened faster. And so it also caused when if somebody was exposed to it, they would die faster. Okay. So there's kind of disadvantages to some of these um, advances in technology. All right, 37. Mendel's law of independent assortment is best demonstrated by which of the following? When two when two sexually reproducing organisms produce offspring, each offspring has unique set of genes. Independent assortment means that when you have the four cells that are produced, they all don't have the same kind of chromosomes. So that's why you don't look exactly like your brothers and sisters because of independent assortment. You have the genes from mom and dad, but they got independently sorted, so everybody looks a little bit different, has a unique look to them, except for identical twins. They get exactly the same information. All right, during meiosis, a genetic recombination results from gene C chromosomes that sort independently and cross over. Going back to looking at the way the chromosomes are, there's usually a little piece of the chromosome that switches places. So when they're together, a little tip on this end might switch places with a tip on the other end, and that's crossing over. So that will create a chromosome with different information on it than it started out with. All right, 39. Law of segregation is observed during the stage of meiosis, which DB sister chromatids are pulled apart and two cells are divided into four. All right, so again, segregation means they separated. So think about that. Even if you don't remember what all the laws are, the law of segregation is where they are going to separate the chromosomes. So they are pulled apart and go into each of the new cells that are created. All right, which of the following characteristics of meiosis explains why the process contributes to genetic diversity within the population? It's A, because it results in novel combinations of alloy. Novel in this case means different, unique. Okay, so you have to just understand what they mean by novel. All righty. All right. Now, you will get scratch paper during the test. You can't take notes in with you, but they will give you paper just to write on. And you need to do this. You need to be able, like for the first one, they've drawn the Punnett square for you. The second one, for 42, you're going to need to draw that Punnett square in order to get the right answer. Okay, so the first one you need to remember that the gametes across the top are from the father, the gametes across the side are from mom. And then what you are doing during meiosis is you are separating them so that one goes to the egg cell and one is representing the egg cell and one is representing the sperm cell, and this box inside is your fertilized egg, because that's exactly what this is. There are four of them. The whole box makes 100%. Each one of those boxes is 25%. Okay, it has to add up to a total of 100%. You need to know that for the next question, not this one. This one wants to know ratios. Okay, you need to know that in this picture, okay, the first thing you need to, the rule is that they use the letter of the dominant characteristic and it's capitalized. They use that same letter for the recessive characteristic and it is lowercase. So you always know what is the dominant by looking at the capital letter. The recessive one is always the lowercase letter, and it's always the same letter. So right now we're not looking at T and S for tall and short. We're looking at big T and little t, okay? Because I had that problem. Some of y'all just kept on giving me a T and an S. It's the same one letter, capitalized and um, lowercase letter. All right. What we're looking at here for each parent is heterozygous tall. Okay, they're both tall, but they're both heterozygous tall. They don't have the same um, genes for both for the characteristics. Okay, so when you cross them, the first box you get a big T and a big T. Second box, you get a big T and a little t. Third box, you get a big T and a little t. And the fourth box, you get two little t's. So even though we have one box that's big T, and that's 25%, they're asking you for phenotypic ratio. They're not asking you for percentages. They're asking you for a ratio of the phenotype. What does it look like? So it's tall and short are your phenotypes. So 3 of them are tall, 1 is short. So the ratio is 3 to 1. Okay. That's how you get that ratio. So the important part of the question here was, what is the phenotype? Know the difference between phenotype and genotype. If they had asked you for genotype, then you could have told it that there's one that was big T. There are 2 that are big T, little t, and 1 that is little t. That's genotype. Okay. They didn't ask you that. The next one, this is the one you're going to need to draw it out. And this one is what we call a dihybrid cross, because you have to remember not only do you have X and Y, but now you also have R for red and little r for white. Okay, so you've got to consider both of those, and they're both going to segregate. So while a lady is X and X, she also is going to have one of those other color genes going with that X. Okay, so down here you have an X and a little r, X and a little r. And they want, and then they also, so read the question carefully. They said that that the gene for eye color is located only on the X chromosome. So it says, which statement best describes the predicted outcome of the cross between a female who is X, capital R, cap X, lowercase r, and then they are mated with X, small r, and Y, and there's no R with that Y, and there's no R with that Y because it's only found on the X chromosome. Okay, so in order to, you can guess at it if you want to, but I would do the whole cross totally out so that you can see the answer for that. Okay, and the answer is A. And that's because, and you can kind of guess at it because you're not going to get any capital R's because male doesn't have any capital R's to give. So the only thing that they can get result in is a female. 50% of the females will look like A. But again, I would suggest that you draw this out on paper so that you can see that. And if you do a Punnett square correctly, it will give you the right answer. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. The right answer for this one is B. The answer for the next one is 50% C. All right. And that's because there's codominance. So you have an equal chance of getting pink and red. Okay. So that's what codominance is. And again, incomplete dominance is codominance. It's not going to be red. It's not going to be white. It's going to be pink. So then you get a 50% chance of them being pink. Not red, not white, pink. Uh, Next one. Here again, if you do your Punnett square, it says in the Punnett square, I don't know where it says below because there isn't one, the portion of predicted outscores on the for two mice. But you can draw your own Punnett square for this, where you have A is dominant and B, a small a, capital A is dominant, lowercase a for black is lowercase a is black, and the parents are heterozygous, which means both parents have a capital A and a lowercase a. I said, okay, one is heterozygous. So one is capital A, one is lowercase a, and the other is homozygous recessive, which means they are both small case a. So you draw your cross for that. And when you draw your cross for that, you're going to end up with uh, um, two of them. A will end up being black in coloration. Okay. And again, the only way you're going to figure that out, I mean, you can try and guess it out. The best way to figure that out is to draw the Punnett square. All right. The probability that a yellow uh, wrinkled pea, a yellow pea and a wrinkled pea, yellow is dominant, wrinkled is recessive, will appear in a cross that looks like this. So you've got your two characteristics, one for color and one for texture. All right, so capital R would be smooth as opposed to wrinkled, and the lowercase y can be whatever color is not yellow. And here again, if you you have to draw your Punnett square in order to figure out the possibilities that you're going to get, and it's going to be C 3 out of 8. All right, what time is it? Okay. The organisms living, an organism is living in a rapidly changing environment. Sexual reproduction is advantageous to the organism's situation because B, sexual reproduction produces offspring with more variation, some of which may be better adapted to a new environment. And that's pretty much the only advantage to sexual reproduction. If you, like the other experiment that we had with the radiation, if you're not doing sexual reproduction and you're simply doing binary fission, you're reproducing the same characteristic over and over and over again. Eventually that characteristic gets weak and resistant to the changes in the environment. But if you are changing up the characteristics along the way through sexual reproduction, through independent assortment, you stand a chance of building characteristics that are stronger and more likely to survive the environment or changes in the environment. All right. Hydra. Hydra look like are little microscopic organisms that look like an octopus or a squid. Right, are organisms that reproduce sexually or asexually, which means what they have the ability to do is one of the processes of asexual reproduction is called budding. They can just grow a little piece off the side of their body and pinch off and it becomes an organism. You can do that. Or you can have a male and female hydra and they reproduce sexually. The particular population of hydra are widely distributed in a large, stable environment. In this situation, it is more advantage for the hydra to reproduce asexually. So individuals don't have to spend energy looking for a mate. Okay. All right. And there's no other way to explain that one. Like I said, they can reproduce all by themselves. They don't have to have a mate, swim around looking for a mate in order to, there's no danger of the species becoming extinct because they don't have a mate. All right, asexual reproduction provides an advantage to organisms under the following conditions, and that would be D. There is a decrease in resources available in the habitat that the organism needs to survive. In other words, the same like the other one. They'll save energy if they simply stay put and asexually reproduce. All right, an organism living in rapidly changing environment, the sexual reproduction is advantageous to the organism because offspring produced during sexual reproduction grow maturity more rapidly than those that produce asexually. If you remember back, um, there's a cycle, there's a cell cycle, and that takes time. Then you have to go through mitosis and meiosis for that cell cycle. So most organisms can reproduce sexually faster than that. While growing, sorry, 50, while providing many advantages, sexual reproduction presents one of the following disadvantages for sexually reproducing organisms. And it requires an expenditure of energy to find a mate, which is kind of the same thing the other question said. All right. Let's see. We got about 10 minutes left. Let's see. I'll stop after 2252. All right. This again is a thing that some of you all had a little issue with. Phylogeny and drawing the tree. The phylogenetic tree is provided. Study the tree before you try to answer the question. According to this tree, which of the following pairs of organisms are most closely related? Again, the tree usually starts from the bottom. Those things that are on the same branch or close to each other are more closely related. In other words, since the bird is far away from the shark, they are not closely related. Probably this is created because they're vertebrates. They all have a skeleton. But notice the ones, the shark and the ray, they're close together, so they are fish. They are further away. The shark is further away from the primate, is further away from the bird. So things that are furthest away are least likely to be related, even though they have the common ancestry of being vertebrates. So the answer for this one is the primates and the rabbits, because that's the one where the primates, I'm sorry, primates, rodents, rabbits, no, where is that? C, primates, rodents, and rabbits, because the rodents and rabbits is a branch off of the primates. So they are the closest related because they are sharing the same branch. Okay, so again, study the branches, who's close, who's not, and that tells you who's more closely related than the other. All right, 52. If we're looking at this, the table shows the characteristics of organisms provided. So it tells you this organism has a nucleus. This organism does not have chloroplast. This organism has a cell wall, and it's made of chitin. And nutrition is heterotrophic, which means it gets its food from outside the body. All right. So while it has a cell wall, it has no chloroplast, so it's not green. Okay. It's not an animal because it does have a cell wall, and it gets its food from outside the body. So it is fungi. So it's not green, but it acts like a plant, but it's not green, so it's fungi. Okay. A fungus is like a mushroom. Looks like a plant, but it's not green. Fungus get its food from outside. It doesn't photosynthesize. Um, what else? But it does have cells that have protective structures on it. Okay. All right. I've been talking a long time. Anybody have any questions? Questions? Those of you who are paying attention, 'cause I see some of y'all are doing everything, but y'all are just here. And like I said, you can look all these questions, review sheets, and the questions will be, and then you get into the exam and you go, where did these questions come from? It's not so much that you're looking at these questions to be on the test, you're looking at the topic. They can ask that topic in any way that they like. You have to understand the topic. So what this study page does is it gives you a list of all the possible topics that they can ask you. What you have to do, and what I'm trying to do with you, is to re-explain the question so that you can think about what the topic is and what the topic is in what the topic involves, so that you can look at this question upside down if you have to. All right. We got 10 minutes on. We got I got 5 minutes. So I'll keep going. Which of the following characteristics of eukaryotic cells, those are the ones that have a nucleus, as opposed to prokaryotic cells, which have genetic material but they're not in a nucleus, are used to support the theory that they evolved from the union of free cells? And that is B, the presence of mitochondria. Mitochondrial DNA are something that the prokaryotic cells don't have. All right. Classification. So again, remember you come up with, find one of the mnemonics to remember so that you have them in order: kingdom, phylum, class, order, genus, and species. Remember, genus and species are always the last two. Genus is capitalized, species is lowercase. So when we have binomial nomenclature, we name organisms by two words, genus and species. First letter is capitalized, first word is capitalized, second word is lowercase. All right, looking at the chart here, we start with the animal kingdom. Oh no, we didn't finish everything. So there was the unit that we did not cover, like I mentioned to you before, was ecology. We have one on Canvas, we have one more unit. So yes, we do have other things to do. Somebody asked, are we, since this covers a lot of the topics, it doesn't cover everything. So we do have work to do after this. Okay, and it'll be unique. We won't be coming back to any of this. You won't have, um, what you will not have is a comprehensive end of year exam. So you will just, the last exam you have will only be on ecology. And more than likely, you're going to have an ecology project as well. So after you do this, again, this is kind of counted as your final exam, and it's 20% of your grade. And then after this, we just need to finish up the last unit in Canvas, answering Malik's question. All right. Okay, the table shows different groups involved. According to the information, the house cat is most closely related to which animal? Um, and what they do is they start at the top. The animal kingdom includes all of those animals, and as you went down the list, you lost a couple of animals along the way until you got to genus, and both the house cat and the lynx are in the same genus, but they are different species. So it is related more closely to the lynx. All right, I'm going to stop there. I'm going to stop there. All right, again, the answer key is attached, so you can go through and look at the other ones. I'll tomorrow, like I said, if I see you all tomorrow, I'll finish the rest of the page with you. Only for the sole purpose of giving more explanation to each question. But some of you feel like you can study on your own. More power to you. Any questions? Any questions? All right, that being said, you all have a great rest of your day. Oh, love y'all. Love y'all. Yeah, some